My own sister made up a lie that I cheated on my fiancé just so she could take him for herself. Nobody believed me back then. Now, 7 years later, I've got a husband I adore and kids who light up my world. Just last week, after one too many drinks, she finally admitted it. I lied about everything. I only wanted him for myself. Now she's going through a divorce, and my ex-fiancé? He's unraveling, practically begging me to come back. You were the love of my life, he keeps saying. And all I can do is smile. Let me take you back to what life looked like 7 years ago. At the time I was 28, now I'm 35. I was engaged to the man I truly believed I'd grow old with. Let's call him Ryan. He was 29 then, 36 now. We'd been a couple for 4 years, living together for 2, and engaged for nearly a year. Our wedding was 6 months out and I was living in what felt like a fairy tale. Ryan checked all the boxes, good-looking, thriving in his job as an architect, charismatic, and most importantly, we dreamed of the same kind of future. Everyone loved him, my parents, our circle of friends, and most of all, my younger sister, Sophie. She was 24 back then, she's 31 now. Growing up, Sophie and I were tight, despite the 4-year gap. She was set to be my maid of honor, helping with every part of the wedding, from picking the dress to scouting venues. Sophie had just gone through a rough breakup and had been staying with us for a while, trying to get her life back on track. In hindsight, the warning signs were there. But hindsight's always crystal clear, isn't it? I should probably mention Sophie was always seen as the prettier one. She had the golden blonde hair, the bright blue eyes, cheerleader looks. Meanwhile, I was the quiet brunette with glasses, always tucked into a book. Sophie never had to try for attention, it just landed on her. I was more introverted, took a little longer to come into my own. But by the time we hit adulthood, I'd grown confident. Found my look, found my pace. And honestly, I'd never been jealous of her. We were different. I had my own strengths. Sophie, though, she always seemed to measure her value by how much male attention she got. At first, it was little things. I'd walk in from work and hear them laughing together in the kitchen. She'd drop comments about their inside jokes that apparently formed while I was away. She started cooking Ryan's favorite meals, saying she just wanted to help out since I was juggling the wedding and my job at the hospital. I didn't think much of it. I trusted Ryan fully. And Sophie? She was my sister. We shared bunk beds as kids. I taught her how to ride a bike. I held her through her first heartbreak. The idea that she would betray me like that never even crossed my mind. It all came crashing down about 4 months before the wedding. I'd been pulling long hours at the hospital on a major project. One Friday, I managed to get off early. I was beat but excited to finally spend a weekend with Ryan. Instead, I walked through the door and saw Sophie crying, telling Ryan something that knocked the air out of him. They both froze when they noticed me. I'll never forget the expression on his face. Confused, angry, and something worse, disgusted. Is it true? He asked, voice cracking. I didn't even know what he meant. Sophie told me everything, he said, voice getting louder. About you and that doctor from your department. How long has it been going on? Were you sleeping with him this whole time? Is that what all those late nights were really about? I stood there in shock. The accusation was so insane, so out of nowhere, that for a second I thought they were messing with me. There was no affair. There wasn't even a male doctor in my department. I worked with Dr. Margaret Ellison, 58 years old, and my mentor since day one at the hospital. What are you even talking about? I asked, totally lost. There's no one else, Ryan. I've never cheated on you. I turned to Sophie, expecting her to jump in and clear up whatever mix-up had just happened. But she wouldn't even look at me. Tears were streaming down her face as she whispered. I saw them, Ryan. In her office last week. I brought her lunch, she didn't know I was there. Then came the fake evidence. I found the texts on her phone. She left it unlocked. I didn't want to say anything, but you needed to know the truth. I was stunned, speechless. Every bit of it was a lie. Sophie hadn't brought me lunch in weeks. And my phone? I never leave it unlocked. That's hospital protocol, patient confidentiality. Show me those messages, I said, my voice trembling. I took screenshots, Sophie stammered. Then I deleted the originals from your phone. I was trying to protect you at first. But later I realized you deserved better. I looked at Ryan, hoping, praying he'd see through the nonsense. We'd built a life together over 4 years. He knew me. Or at least I thought he did. Ryan, she's lying, I said. I don't know why she's doing this, but it's not true. Call Dr. Parker right now. She'll tell you. I've been working on the new patient intake system with her. There is no male doctor. There's no affair. But Ryan didn't want to hear it. He was already throwing clothes into a bag. I need time to think. he muttered, eyes avoiding mine. Think about what? I said, my voice cracking. Some made-up story with zero proof. From someone who's just lying through her teeth? Sophie gently placed her hand on Ryan's arm like she was the one who needed to calm him down. It's okay to be upset, she said in that soft, soothing voice of hers. You have every right to feel hurt. And there I stood, watching my own sister console my fiancé over an affair that never even happened. Felt like I was losing my grip on reality. Get out, I told her, my voice low and steady. Pack your things and get out of this apartment. Ryan whipped around, snapping. Don't take this out on Sophie. She's just the messenger. Then he added, if you want someone to blame, look in the mirror. And right then, I knew it was already over. Sophie had been carefully planting those lies for months, little by little, watering them until they took root deep inside him. She played the long game, and it worked. By the next morning, Ryan was gone, moved out without so much as a real conversation. A few days later, the wedding was officially called off. I stayed behind in our apartment, surrounded by floral samples, guest lists, and untouched wedding magazines, trying to make sense of how my life had fallen apart so quickly. But losing Ryan wasn't the worst part. What came after was even harder. Sophie packed up and left, telling everyone she couldn't stand to be near me after what I'd done. 2 weeks later, a mutual friend told me she and Ryan had been spotted out together. They called it comforting each other. I called it exactly what it was. I was heartbroken but not surprised anymore. The puzzle pieces were finally fitting together. When I tried to explain everything to our parents, they listened. But you could tell they weren't sure. Maybe it was just a misunderstanding, my mom said carefully. Sophie would never lie about something that serious. Even my closest friends didn't fully buy it. Maya, my best friend, said gently, it doesn't sound like Sophie. She always looked up to you. And that's when it really hit me. No one believed me. Not truly. Sophie had always been the emotional one, the dramatic one. I was the rational one, the calm fixer. She cried, I cleaned up the mess. And in this mess, her tears were more persuasive than my truth. 3 months after the wedding was called off, Sophie and Ryan announced they were officially together. They had the nerve to say it just happened, that they never meant to hurt anyone. My parents were clearly uncomfortable with it, but they went along. The heart wants what it wants, my dad said with a shrug. Somehow, I ended up as the villain in their version of the story. I was the cheating ex, and they were just two broken hearts who found each other in the aftermath. I started skipping family gatherings if they were going to be there. I couldn't stand to watch Sophie act like the sweet, supportive sister who, accidentally, fell in love with the man I was supposed to marry. And Ryan, he'd shoot me these guilty looks like I was the one who owed him an apology. I was alone, betrayed by the two people I trusted most, labeled a liar and a cheat. That was my rock bottom. The night I found out they were together, I sat in my quiet, empty apartment and made a decision. They were not going to write the rest of my story. So I sold the place and everything in it. Took a job transfer to a hospital in Chicago, 8 hours away from Indianapolis. I cut ties with nearly everyone except for my parents, barely, and the 2 friends who actually stood by me. The first year was brutal. I started therapy, twice a week, trying to piece myself back together and figure out who I was without all the betrayal weighing me down. I threw myself into work and earned a promotion in less than a year. I joined a hiking group, made new friends, built a new life. One that didn't include Ryan or Sophie. I focused on becoming stronger than the version of me they had broken. 2 years into my new life, I met Daniel. It was at a hospital fundraiser. He was a pediatric surgeon. Smart, gentle, with kind eyes and a calm presence that quietly pulled me in. Even though I was terrified to open my heart again, we took things slow. Trust wasn't something I could offer easily anymore. Not after what I'd been through. But Daniel was steady, honest, patient. Little by little, he helped me start to believe in people again. After a year of dating, I finally sat him down and told him the whole story, every painful detail about Ryan and Sophie. I expected skepticism, maybe even silence. I was used to not being believed. But Daniel just took my hand and said they didn't deserve you. And they sure as hell didn't break you. That night I cried. Not out of sadness, out of relief. For the first time I felt truly seen and understood. We got married 2 years later. It was a small, intimate wedding with just our closest family and friends. Sophie and Ryan weren't invited, despite my mom begging me to make peace. She's still your sister, she'd said. No, I told her gently. She gave up that title a long time ago. By then, Sophie and Ryan were engaged too. They threw a big, fancy wedding, the one I had once planned, with many of the same guests. Same venue, same flowers. My parents went. I didn't. Daniel and I built a real life together. A good life. I became director of hospital administration. He made chief of pediatric surgery. We bought a beautiful old Victorian house and renovated it together. Weekends spent painting, laughing, turning it into a home. 3 years into our marriage, our daughter Grace was born. 2 years later, we welcomed our son, Ethan. My life became everything I once thought I'd lost, full of love, purpose, and peace. Everything Sophie tried to take from me, I built for myself. And more. The irony wasn't lost on me. In trying to take everything from me, Sophie accidentally forced me to build something better, something real. Over the years, I kept contact with my family to a minimum. Holiday phone calls, the occasional visit, always planned for when I knew Sophie and Ryan wouldn't be around. I never saw them face to face. Never talked to them directly. Every now and then, my parents would casually bring them up, mentioning their wedding, their house, their so-called perfect life. I'd nod, offer a polite smile, and steer the conversation elsewhere. But I wasn't bitter anymore. I was too busy living a life I actually loved. Just last month, it had been exactly 7 years since Ryan and I split. 7 full years of building something stronger, healing in ways I never thought possible, and finding joy that wasn't attached to anyone's approval. My parents were coming up on their 40th wedding anniversary and were determined to have both of their daughters under one roof. After some long talks with Daniel, I agreed to attend a small family dinner at their place. It would be the first time I'd be in the same room as Sophie and Ryan since everything went down. You don't have to go, Daniel told me. They'll understand. But I just shook my head. I'm not hiding from them anymore. They don't get to have that kind of power over me. So we arranged for my aunt to watch the kids and made the 8-hour drive back to Indianapolis. Strangely enough, I felt calm. 7 years had changed me. I wasn't the broken woman they left behind. I was someone new, stronger, grounded, whole. Dinner was just about as awkward as you'd expect. Sophie looked older than her 31 years. Her expression was tight, like someone carrying too much unhappiness for too long. Ryan barely looked in my direction. He kept his eyes on his plate like it held all the answers. Daniel, ever the anchor, sat beside me and offered quiet reassurance, his hand brushing mine under the table now and then. We made it through the evening with stiff conversation and surface-level smiles. My mom was visibly relieved that nothing exploded. Later, my dad popped open a pricey bottle of champagne to toast the occasion. 1 glass turned into 2, then 3, and as the night dragged on, Sophie kept pouring. It was pushing midnight when it finally happened. My parents had gone to bed. Daniel was off in the living room, keeping Ryan engaged in a chat about some architectural detail in the house, probably on purpose. I was in the kitchen alone, clearing dessert plates, when Sophie stumbled in. She leaned on the counter and watched me in silence for a moment too long. You've done well for yourself, she slurred. Perfect husband. Perfect job. Perfect little family. I didn't say a word. Just kept stacking dishes into the washer. That was supposed to be me, she muttered, her tone sharp and bitter. I was supposed to have the perfect life. Not you. Never you. I turned to face her, my expression unreadable. Sophie, you're drunk. Go to bed. She let out a dry laugh. You know what's funny, she said, tears starting to well up in her eyes. He never loved me the way he loved you. Not once. Not in 7 years. Her voice cracked, and for the first time I saw it. She wasn't picking a fight. She wasn't gloating. She looked defeated. I made it all up, she whispered. There was no affair. No doctor. No text messages. I wanted him. For me. Even though I'd known the truth all along, actually hearing her say it felt like a punch to the chest. For 7 years I'd carried this truth by myself. Why now? I asked, my voice steady. Because it didn't work, she said, sliding down to the floor like she had nothing left to hold her up. We're getting divorced. Found out last month he's been sleeping with his 24-year-old intern. She laughed again, a sharp, painful sound. Poetic, isn't it? I stood there frozen, letting it all sink in. Part of me wanted to yell, to rage, to ask her what gave her the right to destroy my life. But looking at her, drunk, broken, crying on our parents' kitchen floor, I felt something I hadn't expected. Pity. You know the worst part, she went on, her voice cracking. I knew he wasn't worth it. I always knew. But I was so jealous of you. You had your life together. The career. The man. I wanted to prove I could take it from you. That I was better. I looked down at her. And was it worth it? I asked quietly. She lifted her head slowly, eyes red and glassy. 7 wasted years, she said. A marriage built on lies. No job because he didn't want me to work. No kids because he wasn't ready. And now he's leaving me for someone half my age. She gave a weak smile. So no. It wasn't worth it. I should have felt vindicated. Triumphant, even. But I didn't. What I felt was grief for the relationship we could have had. For the sister I lost. I'm sorry, Sophie, I said. And I meant it. Not for what she was going through, but for everything we lost along the way. She looked confused, like she'd expected me to explode. How can you be this calm? She asked. I ruined your life. I shook my head. No. You didn't ruin it. You just changed its course. And that's a big difference. I reached out, helped her up, and walked her to the guest room. As I turned to leave, she grabbed my wrist. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know it doesn't fix anything, but I am. I nodded once. Then I walked away. When I walked back into the living room, Daniel was sitting there alone. Ryan had apparently stepped outside to take a call. Daniel looked up at me with that steady concern of his. Everything okay? He asked. I saw Sophie follow you into the kitchen. I sat beside him and leaned into the comfort of his presence, letting his warmth ground me. She came clean, I said quietly. Told me everything. The lies. The manipulation. All of it. His arm tightened gently around me. How do you feel? He asked. I took a moment to think. Then I let out a slow breath. Free, I finally said. Like the last piece of a puzzle had finally snapped into place. The next morning was heavy with tension. Sophie avoided looking at me across the breakfast table. Ryan wasn't even there, said he had to leave early for work even though it was Sunday. Daniel and I were just finishing loading the car to head back to Chicago when Ryan's sleek black BMW pulled into the driveway. He stepped out looking exhausted, eyes sunken, guilt all over his face. Can we talk? He asked, barely above a whisper. Just for a minute. Daniel looked at me, waiting for my cue. I gave a small nod and he squeezed my hand before sliding into the driver's seat to give us space. Ryan and I walked to the edge of the driveway, far enough that nobody could hear us. He rubbed the back of his neck, nervous, like he didn't know where to start. Sophie told me she confessed, he said. Last night. About everything. He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it gave me a weird sense of déjà vu. I didn't know, he said quickly. I swear. I had no clue. I really believed. You were a fool, I said, calm as ever. But so was I. I trusted both of you. That made him flinch. But he didn't stop. When she told me about the affair, I was devastated. I couldn't think straight. And then she was there, supportive, understanding. I held up a hand. Spare me the backstory. It doesn't matter anymore. He paused, then looked at me long and hard. You look happy, he said. Are you? I thought of Daniel. Our 2 children. The peaceful home we'd built. The life that was truly mine. Yeah, I said honestly. I really am. I made the biggest mistake of my life letting you go, he said, voice cracking. Believing her over you, these past 7 years have been. He stopped, swallowing the rest of that sentence. I never stopped loving you. Not really. He stepped forward, desperation creeping into his voice. Please, is there any chance? Anything at all? No, I said firmly without hesitation. There isn't. We could try again, he pleaded. I'll do whatever it takes. You're the love of my life. You always have been. 7 years ago, those words would have broken me. Now, they meant absolutely nothing. I glanced back at the car where Daniel was waiting, my husband, my rock, the father of my children. The man who had stood by me without question. I turned back to Ryan and smiled, not out of spite, not to wound him, but because I was at peace. Goodbye, Ryan, I said, then turned and walked away. As we drove out of town, Daniel glanced over at me. You okay? He asked softly. I looked in the rearview mirror, watching my childhood home shrink behind us. And with it, the last echoes of a life I'd left behind long ago. I'm perfect, I said, and I meant every word. It's been 3 months since Sophie's confession. Their divorce was finalized last week. Ryan moved in with his intern almost immediately. From what my mom tells me, Sophie started therapy and is, for the first time in years, actively job hunting. Ryan still calls now and then. I never answer. My parents are trying finally to rebuild their relationship with me. Now that they understand just how deep the betrayal went. It's not easy, but we're getting there slowly. As for me, well, I just got offered the position of CEO, youngest in our hospital network's history. Daniel and I are planning a trip to Europe next summer with the kids. Our life? It's thriving. Sometimes I catch myself thinking about how different things might have been. If Sophie hadn't lied. If Ryan had trusted me. If I had stayed in that old life. But then I see Daniel in the kitchen singing silly songs while our kids giggle from the table. I think about the career I love, the home we've built, the peace I've earned. And I realize something important. Sometimes, the worst betrayal can end up leading you to your best life. The real revenge isn't in Sophie's broken marriage or Ryan's regrets. It's in this happiness I live every day. A happiness they can see but will never ever touch. And all I can do is smile. Edit. Wow, I didn't expect this story to blow up overnight. Thank you all for the kindness and support. It really means more than you know. To answer some of the common questions. Yes, my parents know the full truth now. They've apologized deeply for not believing me back then. No, I don't plan to have a relationship with Sophie outside of the occasional family gathering. Some betrayals you can forgive but never forget. I've blocked Ryan's number since sharing this. You're all right, I don't need that energy. And no, this isn't the plot of some Hallmark movie. Just my real life, though I admit sometimes it really does feel like fiction. Telling this story out loud? It's been more healing than I expected.